Welcome so much to the next episode of Student Sciences Stakeholders, which is NCAS-M's new podcast. Our podcast gives listeners the opportunity to learn all there is to know about NCAS-M from the most important people that make up the center, which is our student scientists and our stakeholders. Again, we are in the second series where we are highlighting faculty. Our guest today, I'm so excited to hear from him, is Thomas Gill, who's a faculty member in the Department of Geological Sciences and the Environmental Science and Engineering program at the University of Texas, El Paso, or UTEP, as many of us call it. He previously worked as a physical scientist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and a research assistant professor at Texas Tech University. He is the primary instructor of weather and climate science courses and has an extensive experience as a mentor, which we will get into today. Dr. Gill, how are you?
It's great to be here, and it's great to be on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to really give everybody a chance to understand who you are and how you got to, academia and really, making your way as a well-known professor and scientist. Will you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Tom Gill. As you said, I'm a professor at the University of Texas at El Paso, or UTEP. And, I've always, I have to admit, I've always been a nerd. I've always been a science nerd and a nature nerd. And, gosh, I remember when I was a little kid, when they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be one of two things. I wanted to be either a scientist or a pro sportscaster. And it looks like the sportscaster isn't going to work out. So I'm really glad that the scientist thing did work out.
It's funny, all of us have stories about dreaming of being something, and it's always wonderful when it actually happens. And I have to tell you that as a child, I wanted to be a broadcast journalist too. Just seeing those folks on the news were just so intriguing to me. So will you tell me a little bit about your early career and then how you moved into academia? Because many of us kind of find ourselves there, but may not have planned it.
Well, first I want to give a shout out to my parents. They're both gone now. May they rest in peace. But it's a little bit of an unusual path to science. As a kid growing up in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, my parents were both artists. And my father in particular, he was a painter. He was a landscape painter. And pretty often on the weekends as a kid growing up, we'd pack up and go off to some beautiful part of California, the rocky coastline, the mountains, the beautiful wine country. So Dad could sketch out landscapes for his paintings. And I guess I was a smart aleck kid because I'd always be asking my mom and dad, why is it always so cloudy here near the coast when it's nice and clear and warm inland? Why is there snow up on top of the mountain, but not on the bottom? Why is there grass on this side of the hill and a forest on the other? Why is there a forest on this side of the mountain and a desert on the other? Why is it nice and warm down in the valley and cold up on the top of the mountain? And my parents were always, gee, I don't know, son. Why don't you go to the library and look it up and tell us all about it? And so that's exactly what I did. And that's really what I think really inspired my interest in weather and climate and the environment. And as a kid, I had all of the science nerd things. I had my microscope, I had my telescope, I had my chemistry set. I had my backyard weather station. Man, it was one of the things that got me up in the morning was to get up and go figure out what the low temperature was early in the morning. And fortunately, my parents really nurtured that passion for science and encouraged me to take that as far as I could in higher education, which led to a PhD at the University of California at Davis, UC Davis, go Ags, and then on to my scientific career.
You know, as you were rattling off those questions, I was thinking, yeah, why is that? and it's amazing to me too that, you know, sometimes when, you know, we're asking questions of parents, it's so wonderful when they just listen and they don't say, you know, be quiet, because that thinking through the beauties of nature and thinking through the beauties of your environment can be so inspiring. And it's amazing to hear that just as your dad was being inspired, you were being inspired too. So what a wonderful story to share.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
and so
certainly parents out there, encourage that curiosity in your kids.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you. How did you get into academia?
So I did not actually plan to go into academia. I did definitely plan to go into science. And really, I figured that my career would probably be in government, in an agency like NOAA or NASA or one of the science agencies. I had kind of figured that that's where I would go. As you said, I did a postdoc after I finished my PhD. I was offered a postdoc position with the U.S. Department of Agriculture that also does a lot of science in Lubbock, Texas. And from there, I sort of angled my way into academia. After my postdoc was over at the USDA, I was offered a position at the University at Texas Tech, but again, it was a research faculty position, and I was a research faculty member for about 6 years. But then a position opened up at the University of Texas at El Paso, and I happened to be doing research at the time about dust storms, which has become kind of my big area of scientific research. And I actually had realized that a lot of the dust storms that were affecting Lubbock, Texas, where I worked at Texas Tech, were blowing in from El Paso. So I jumped at the opportunity to apply for the job at UTEP, and fortunately I was granted it. And I became somewhat of an accidental professor, because I didn't expect to be the typical professor, but once I got my feet on the ground in the job, I realized, hey, this is something I can probably succeed at.
It's funny because I was a reluctant professor too. Didn't think that I kind of knew how to do it or how to do it. But I think it's often our loves for first the subject, of course, but then the desire to share that knowledge, which is, you know, such an incredible part of the teaching and learning experience. So before we get into the mentorship question, which is probably more likely to ask right now, I do want to ask you how you got connected to NCAS-M.
Well, the University of Texas at El Paso, or UTEP, is a Hispanic serving institution. I'm really proud to be a faculty member at UTEP, which is one of the I'd say largest and most powerful Hispanic serving institutions in the United States. It's really, I think we're still the only Research One university in the USA with the majority Mexican American population. And I have a serious disability. I'm not an ethnic minority. I'm a white guy, but I have a serious disability. And as a kid, I was always part of a member of one of those excluded groups where my counselors in school would say, oh, no, you can't really go into science. That's not for someone like you. And I realized how important it was for groups that have not had that advantage to have opportunities. and for people to have role models in the professions, in professional fields, in science. And so becoming a faculty member at UTEP, I think it was after a few years, I was asked if I would like to join as one of the participating faculty members in the predecessor to NCAS-M, just NCAS, NOAA Center on Atmospheric Science, for which UTEP has been a partner institution for many, many years. And knowing the importance of opening doors to underrepresented groups, again, I jumped at that opportunity because I knew how important it would be for students to have those opportunities when they thought, they might not have them.
And again, kudos to you for the defiance and the courage and the commitment to ignore naysayers, because I think that's how so many amazing people, bubble up in our world and become role models and become people who reach back because they've had challenges and they've refused to crumble under the pressures of those challenges, or refuse to believe those who have told them that they couldn't do anything. Which to me brings us to a wonderful conversation. Howard University is the lead institution for the NCAS-M grant. As many of you know, it is an HBCU. Many of the 13 institutions that are a part of the umbrella of NCAS-M are HBCUs and HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions. And it all flows under the mission that is to create a pipeline of individuals who have historically not been a part of this STEM journey, this STEM field, and create a pipeline into NOAA. And we all know that workplaces and workforces that are more diverse are better for everyone. They're often more productive, and they are often more suited to reflect society as a whole. So with that said, let's talk about mentorship, which is a big part of NCAS-M, which is a big part of what you do as a faculty member. Is there one moment or memorable moment or just a reflection about mentorship as it relates to the NCAS-M grant that you'd like to share with us?
Well, it's not one single moment, but it's a group of moments, and that is seeing students succeed, seeing students that I have mentored over the years on and off with the NCAS-M program really bloom and really take off in learning science and gaining self-confidence, gaining professional abilities and skills, having opportunities of the sort that perhaps they never thought that they might have an opportunity to, and then seeing those students go on to really succeed. For example, several of my students that I have mentored as master's degree students who might have even been, I always had great confidence in them, might have been considered by some to be kind of marginal when they applied for graduate school, that went on to great success in NCAS-M and then have gone on to get PhDs, have careers in various areas, and really see the self-confidence bloom in these students as they have experiences and realize that, yeah, I can do this. I can succeed in this STEM field. And pretty much all of the students that I've worked with, I've seen that happen with them. And it really makes me proud to see my students succeed.
And that is kind of, I think, the ebb and flow of what many of us don't share enough about as academics. Meeting someone early in their, academic career, especially freshmen, and then seeing their growth over a 4-year period. And then at graduation, we live in these cycles of a student coming into our office and telling us an idea, and then, becoming their advisor and working them through their research, and then seeing them graduate off and entering the workforce or even academia. We get a chance to see and be a part of, someone's pivotal years. And it is such an amazing, I think, calling that you have, that I have. So I want to wrap up with a question that's kind of very hypothetical, but you can answer it as you wish. But NCAS-M does have a very unique place in what it does for NOAA and creating this pipeline. But it also has a unique place in what faculty do, what you do in terms of bringing your research and new knowledge to the world, having, students as a part of that journey. Where do you see the STEM field, or where do you see NCAS fitting into the STEM field as we look to the future?
Well, I'm really hoping that NCAS-M and the related programs, I guess you could say the sister cooperative science centers of NOAA, will really help make an impact in diversifying, especially the atmospheric and oceanic sciences, really NOAA's core field, because it's really not a secret that amongst the sciences, the geosciences are one of the least diverse traditionally, and that's just got to change. And probably the atmospheric sciences are amongst the least diverse of the earth and environmental sciences. So there's a tremendous need for our field to really become a lot more diversified, a lot faster. And honestly, in the 15 or so years that I've been affiliated with NCAS-M and its previous center, NCAS, I actually have seen the atmospheric sciences getting a lot more diverse and having a lot more really influential, internationally renowned voices in our field, being a lot more diversified in terms of color, gender, ethnic background, and so on. And I think we've got a long way to go, but we're certainly on that pathway. And NCAS-M, and before that, NCAS, has certainly played a key role in doing that. And I can see with the students, not just my own, but the students of my colleagues at UTEP and across the center, also gaining those professional skills and self-confidence, that they are also on their way to being the next generation of people who are diversifying the atmospheric and climate sciences. So I think it's absolutely crucial work. It's necessary work. And NCAS-M is certainly playing a key role in doing that and has to continue doing that as we move into future years.
I couldn't agree with you more, which is why that I've stayed a part and been excited to be a part, as you, for almost 15 years, the NCAS-M grant, because I just believe in it so much. I do, and I see, like you, the difference that it makes. So I just want to thank you today for joining us, Dr. Thomas Gill of UTEP. It was wonderful learning more about you and your role and your childhood and your commitment to NCAS-M and the STEM field. I want to say thank you for all those listening to our latest episode of Student Sciences and Stakeholders. To learn more about NCAS-M, you can visit our website at ncas-m.org. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at NCAS News. And we do have an amazing YouTube channel with great content there as well. Stay tuned. Our next podcast guest will be Joseph Wilkins. Thank you so much for joining us.